one apprentice. I could possibly have one more apprentice in terms of the way the ratios work right now, as far as I understand. So that's a bit of a problem. And I've got 9 guys who are very good at what they do up on the roof. I don't want to put my master on the roof very often at all, and he actually doesn't want to go on the roof. My journeyman's quite nimble. He's happy to go on the roof, but not really. He'll go there when he needs to go there, but not more than he needs to be there. And the apprentice who used to be a solar installer is happy to go up there and do what he needs to do as well. But the other 9 guys that are capable of doing what they do it very well. They've been doing it, some of them for 4, 5, 6 years, some of them for a year or 2. They know what they do. They don't want to become electricians. They don't want to spend 4 or 5 years doing an apprenticeship. So I think that this is the problem that I guess may or may not be resolved by the MTC and OCOD is, what do I do with these 9 guys on the roof now that know what they're doing and they only want to be solar, PV installers, because that's all they want to do. And I think this is where I think the opportunity just to sort of, and I mean, I'm not sure whether, I don't want to say like a whole new trade, because it's not really a trade, it's kind of like a little sub-trade, like a specialization. I think that's where I personally see that there's, I'd like those, and I've got 4 of those 9 guys who are actually working towards being NAVSEP certified installers. Like, and 5 or 6 of them already have their entry level, which is pretty straightforward, but they're actually all going for that higher level certification. I think that's personally where I see there's a bit of a conundrum here. And obviously, you can draw the line at the combiner box, or maybe, in the blue sky world, I personally draw it down at the inverter for somebody who's a highly specialized, individual who has, specific training that gets them down to the inverter. And obviously, like, there's interaction between the journeyman or the master or whatever it is. That's not how it works right now, but that's where I think I would personally like to see, the province move towards whatever. And obviously, I fully believe that, people who are doing solar should be either licensed electrical contractors, or they should be the license. They're working with a licensed electrical contractor. There's a lot of gray sky over the last 2 years with PV companies pulling permits just for the panels, but then sort of really hiring electrical contractors. And then there's gray area there, and it wasn't really being addressed very well. And I don't want to fault the ESA for that, but I think they actually had jurisdiction to stop that from happening. If they really wanted to sort of enforce, they could. But obviously, ESA inspectors have been learning on the job, as well, as we all know. And a lot of those guys are still way below par too, so in some cases. So it's more of a comment, but I think that's where I see that where we need to be going, is sort of providing an opportunity for those 9 guys who work for me who don't want to become electricians.
Well, thank you, Blair, for the comment. We're a little over time. I think we have time for a few more questions or comments, but let's try to keep them real brief if we can. Name and affiliation.
Voltec Construction. I have another company called Hilton Construction, been in the business for 26 years. I guess this question is kind of to the electricians more than to you, Steve. You guys are looking at kind of making sure that the electricians get the electrical component of it only. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
Wiring.
The wiring.
Wiring above 42.
What about the grounding?
The grounding and bonding is under section 10, that's electrical as well.
So they would have to just make sure that the grounding was okay before they hooked up and...
Well, if these were batteries instead of solar modules, the grounding and bonding would be done by electricians, not by others.
Right, but like we're doing microfits, and generally the guys that are on the roof are bringing the ground down. Now, if the electrician authorized it, checked it out, made sure that everything was okay, and then made their connection, would that be okay with you guys?
According to ESA, no.
They would have to physically
Bonding,
install the ground.
The only thing, and Ted Elecna spoke to this on Friday, the only thing that where the electricians works, where the non-electrician stops is after they plug the plug-and-play connectors together. And I understand your dilemma. And you did have a very good point that those persons could be well qualified to do that work, but the reality of it is if once you start that avalanche, there's no end to it. And then it gets, next thing you know, they're doing some other piece of work that is outside the scope. So how do they know what size bond wire to use?
Well, that would all be spec'd out before the job starts.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of it has to do with making sure that your job is set up correctly right from the get-go. Like we have structural engineers, and of course, you're not gonna, like this gentleman here, you're not gonna send somebody up, I'm not gonna design the system, I'm gonna have a professional engineer design the system. I'm not gonna do the electrical, I'm gonna have a master electrician on site to pull the permits, get the ESA, hydro, all that sort of stuff sorted out.
I think the problem is when you start that down the road, then do we say that they can go work for Glen Sturdy and do high voltage work? So this, where the problem enters in, is you have to be able to defend yourself, and it was made, we actually reapproached MTCU for clarification on bonding and grounding, keeping in mind to your point, in the beginning, we just assumed all the work was electrical work, so why would we need to go start to bifurcate it into other people because of the gold rush aspect, but for no other reason? Battery rooms, there isn't a battery room guy. Battery rooms are done by electricians, always have been.
Yeah, but when we get our engineering done, at the end of the job, we have to send in a piece of paper from the engineer stating that it's certified by the engineer. So why not do something like that, where they can check it and make sure that it's done?
We certainly have to do that on plenty of other installations we do, safety and otherwise.
Do you guys want to have lunch? Because we do have a half-hour presentation.
2 minutes.
A 2-minute presentation?
2 minutes. Lunchtime.
Any quick comments or questions?
Good afternoon, my name is Dave Bamford. I was a project manager, I'm a master electrician. I've been personally involved with Jeff Thompson and from ESA, designing many of the systems in the KW area, Moorfield, Seaforth. I'm directly responsible for completely saturating that place with PV solar installers. I guess it's more of a comment compared to that last question there. I'd like to put that to the MOL. Is at any point, if you were to show up on his job site installing those systems now, running the grounding cable, would that not follow, be breaking the law as it is now?
Short answer?
Yeah.
The short answer is yes, it would be.
Okay, so that's pretty cut and dry then, isn't it?
All right, I missed that.
Bob Hill, Durham College. I'm a licensed electrician and I also teach PV. John and I have been to the CANSIA conference talking about where the skills void is, and everybody in the room sort of seems to be under the same thoughts, but we're kind of avoiding the topic where the Ministry of Labor and the MTCU is very clear about electrical work. Electrical equipment must be installed and wired by electricians. And PV installers that have been doing the work, and as Steve called it, the Wild West, and we are getting a reputation as being the Wild West, people just going and doing whatever they want. Why wouldn't a person that's been doing PV installations and wants to continue to do it as an electrical apprentice and get their electrical license and do it safely? But where the skills void seems to be, and there's been a couple of questions and a couple of comments, always comes to guaranteeing that the system is going to function the way it was designed, or that a professional engineer is going to certify the system. And as Phil said, there aren't too many out there that are trained. That's where the void is. That's where the training needs to come in. That's where we need to have a new technician category, a new engineering technician category, where you have people do the design, have people do the layout, and then the customers will be happy with the system because it'll be performing the way it was guaranteed and installed safely by electricians.
May I add to that, because on the board I presented OMIA, and the insurance people are all upset and concerned. The insurance industry doesn't know who put the job in, how much of it was done by electrician, how much was done by the homeowner himself before he would have people finish it off. So the insurance industry said, I don't know whether to insure this or not because we don't know who put it all in. So possibly we need to straighten that out. And certainly the banks are the same way. They say, well, why should we finance this if it wasn't installed correctly? And then the OBOA people from the local authority having jurisdiction, they come along and they say, well, this isn't the same as the engineer designed it. So I'm not going to stand behind this. And before you know it, City Hall's brought into it. It all falls through the cracks. And later on, something happens and the whole thing falls down. And then we got a major lawsuit. That's when we go to the lawyers down Bay Street.
All right, well, I'm glad that we've begun the discussion, and obviously we need more time and more voices at the table, and there are some real key issues at stake. I just want to add one point here, that the Ministry of Energy, and very from high up in the government, by incentivizing this program with performance-based incentives, the feed-in tariff program, it is entering into new territory. And Chris, this is a message to take back to the ministry, that we're going to have power plants all over the province, and as a model for the rest of the country and perhaps the rest of the world, on people's homes, fields, businesses. And of course they need to be installed safely, but we have to be concerned with the longevity of it. Is it going to be safe throughout its lifespan? And is it going to produce the energy? There are a lot of people in this industry who are sinking their money in, and they're going to get their money out, and there's going to be a lot of people left hanging with systems that are not performing. So there's a lot of issues here that need to be dealt with, and we do need some time. I don't want to hold people for lunch too much, so Lane and Sven, if you guys start and we don't finish, we'll bring you back in after lunch. But I thought it would be appropriate, first I just reminded myself, they are testing the alarm system here today, and if you hear some alarms go off, I'm supposed to tell you that don't run out of the building, someone will come in and tell you there's a fire, which makes me think, of course, that fire alarm installation, sprinkler installation is a separate trade, right? That's taken away from we'll see how well it works today. But I want to give you guys the opportunity to have the final word. Please keep it really brief. I'm going to start with you, John. Walk your way through, and Steve, since you're the lonely duck here, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. I think that's been some pretty interesting conversation. We've had a chance as well to hear from other people from their perspective that certainly had some good points. So one thing that's missing from this model that might help answer the question is the Electrical Safety Authority. Keep in mind that they're the group that does the final inspection. So, but for that, that's one of our roadblocks that we have. And I don't know of any engineers that will sign off on a project without an ESA certificate. So we have many layers in place, and this whole onion we've been peeling back for 3 years. It's certainly been an issue where we're still not there yet. And I know that your thoughts on where the trade needs to expand, or we need to look at people in the gaps, that is a huge gap, because we struggle to find people that can do design. So certainly that's a way to open things up. Okay, so certainly was interesting.
I guess my comment on this is, my comment on this is, I think there's a place for the PV installer, of course. Right? We have an industry here, and I really feel for the guys that are in the industry right now. But working together with electrical contractors, I think we need to find that line, right? So it's clear for everybody, and that we can work together from there.
I agree with Sandy too as well, but at the end of the day, I don't want to see a separate certification for solar PV installers. No disrespect to the havoc in the fire alarm industry, but they did take some of the work that they were supposed to be doing, which was fine, but now, again, they're stretching those limitations of work in the industry that's happening. And this is what we don't want to happen here.
Well, fair enough, and with respect to a certification, and again, with lack of better words in terms of trade, designation, specialization, value added, at the end of the day, only good can come from that sought after knowledge, way beyond any sort of 40-hour advanced training that can do really much. If it's a matter of work taken away, I'm not sure about the bureaucracy associated with that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really all about just making sure the best systems are installed to represent our customers' best interest. And a harmonious approach is really all that should be. And again, very refreshing to know that these efforts are in place, but they should be also beyond our electricians included. And again, I'm speaking as someone who hires electricians to do pretty much all my turnkey projects. But there are aspects that are not using it, and it's really all about there's a new economy, and let's just make sure that it as well as it works to protect our public.
All right, well, I know there's a lot of people that have questions and comments. Again, this is the beginning of the conversation. The focus this morning is on safety. In the afternoon, we're going to be talking more about quality, ethics, how to really build an industry and train people. So I hope you stick around for that conversation. And I think we're probably going to have some small group meetings with ministry officials and others, and there'll be opportunities to participate online and in person. But I hope before we turn to our 30-minute panel, that I think now will be a 20-minute panel, of Lane and Sven to join me in thanking our panel for sharing